In Mississippi, they found a man who holds the record. And I'm not talking about the most interceptions in NFL history, which he also owns. He used charity foundations meant to help breast cancer patients and underserved and disabled children to funnel six-figure sums into the University of Southern Mississippi Athletic Foundation. He accepted payments from the Mississippi Community Education Center by way of the Mississippi Department of Human Services to the tune of 1.1 million for giving speeches at events he never even attended. In 2008, as a married man, he sent unsolicited dick pics to a media member who covered the team that he was a quarterback of. That last one's not illegal, but I wanted to paint the full picture. The full depth of this scandal is 77 million in misappropriated welfare funds from the poorest state, from the poorest people most in need of it, by the Wrangler-wearing welfare queen Brett Favre. Why do I bring this up? Because throughout all of this, he has yet to be charged. He has yet to be charged, while most others involved in this scandal have already pled guilty. There are literal text messages floating around that you and I can see from Favre showing his knowledge that not only he complicit, that he knew what he was doing was illegal, and using his white privilege and clout amassed from his career in football, coerced and co-opted others into his scheme to defraud the needy from funds that could legitimately change their lives for the better. Why do I bring this up? Because every goddamn one of us should be, until that man is behind bars. What makes him so special? That he deserves to be walking around consequence-free? I mean, the fact that he's thrown 59 more NFL interceptions than anyone in history? The fact that his career passer rating is in the ballpark of greats like Cam Newton, Case Keenum, and Sam Bradford? The fact that his touchdown to interception rate is tied with Brian Hoyer? Smoke Show! Greetings, humans. My name is Josh Smokey Hell Nelson, and welcome to what will surely be a ranty episode of The Smoke Show. And yes, that intro served to highlight the scumbag that is Brett Favre, while also bagging on his shitty accomplishments in the only arena he was ever able to satisfy someone. On today's episode, we are going to highlight some of the bigger issues at the quarterway mark of the season, and my thoughts on those. What is this, a glossary? Watch the episode to see! However, I know that there are some issues and topics that I just cannot get to, so let's show some love to those who can. The Smoke Show is a proud member of the Fantasy Points Media Group. If I haven't covered it, the Fantasy Points Media Group has a show that will, and then some. I'm going to rattle off some names here that will blow your mind here, the depths that this group entails. The TNFF Pod, Dynasty Vipers, Dynasty Happy Hour, Play to Win, Triple Play Fantasy, Campus to Canton, Injury Prone with Dr. Edwin Porras. I mean, fuck, win is in his name. Preferred Line Podcast, The Ride In, Familia FFB with recent guest of The Smoke Show, Mr. Jorge Martin. And I ran out of fingers, but the newest edition, the Full Tilt Podcast. Woo, go Canada! And of course, the Fantasy Points Podcast. The Fantasy Points Media Group is brought to you by FantasyPoints.com, where you can use the discount code SMOKY22. It's going to be down at the bottom of your screen all episode, folks, for the best price off the best site in sports. Period. Without further ado, let's do this. Smoke Show! Kyle Anthony Pitts. If you follow me on Twitter at SmokeyHellNFL, you've surely come across the 2-second video of me emphatically stating, Kyle Anthony Pitts, next question. He is my favorite NFL player, balled out for my Florida Gators, and proceeded to put up a historic rookie season, only to be absolutely squandered this year by the bumbling incompetence of one Arthur Smith, hashtag fire Arthur Smith. You look at the tight ends with at least 10 receptions who have put up 15 yards per reception, and it's Dallas Goedert, Good on you, buddy. And Kyle Anthony Pitts! Giving the ball to Pitts is nearly a guaranteed first down and more. Yet, we are seeing Arthur Smith let Parker fucking Hess outsnap Pitts 48-34 this past week, 43-38 the week before. This is not Sparta, but this is fucking madness! What do you have against using your best player, Arthur? According to Dwayne McFarlane on Twitter, at Dwayne McFarlane, Pitt's route I knew I was gonna fuck that. Pitt's route participation has fallen from 91% in week 2 against the Rams to 68% against Seattle, where he put up 87 yards on 5 receptions, all the way down to 60% this week against Cleveland. Cleveland, a team who, yes, have been stingy in allowing points to the tight end position this season. But, I mean, you leave a guy in there who can only complete 7 passes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Why leave the team hanging out to dry like this? Because despite his best efforts, he's actually won a couple games. Otherwise, I would accept the excuse that he is trying to tank for Stroud or Young, stud quarterbacks in the upcoming class. But Arthur Smith can't even tank right. I mean, I could accept by sacrificing 2022 golden pastures for Kyle Pitts could lie ahead. But as I said, he can't even fucking tank right. Thankfully, other candidates, like Week 3 opponent Seattle, seem to also be screwing up their tanks by winning games. This is maddening because when you actually watch these games, you see what Pitts does literally every time he touches the ball. But that has barely happened ever. And it is borderline criminal. And I truly believe Arthur Smith should be tried in front of an international tribunal for crimes against humanity. Smoke show! In all seriousness, no. What to do with Pitts in fantasy? Yes, I would not blame you for getting some high-priced trade value back and jumping ship like a coward. There are few fantasy players out there more invested in shares of Pitts than I, who am currently running at 74% exposure across my 19 leagues, so I understand the range of emotions that come with this territory. At this point, if you, unless you think you're getting a really great return, my advice is to hold. If Arthur Smith is really, really legitimately trying to win games, he will turn to Ritter sooner than later, as we have already happened to see in Pittsburgh, who have kind of a similar quarterback situation. Came out today that they are officially moving forward with Kenny Pickett. Baby hands. When this happens, turning over to Ritter, I expect an uptick in points for Kyle Anthony Pitts. According to Fantasy Points Prospect Guide, Ritter has, and I quote, a willingness to make stick throws into tight windows versus man and zone with an aggressive throwing mindset, and made special throws that demanded velocity and precise ball placement, flashed higher level throwing traits. End quote. Sounds like traits that might help a freak athlete who last year, according to Scott Barrett at fantasypoints.com, was the #1 outside receiver in the NFL in yards per route run on routes out wide. Again, according to the Fantasy Points Prospect Guide, a, quote, red flag with Ritter was his poor third down production in 2021. He had a 47.1 conversion rate with 5 yards per attempt, 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and 10 sacks. You know what might help that? A guy who gets a first down or more every time he touches the fucking ball. I'm so done hammering this point. Kyle Anthony Pitts, next question. Smoke show! The next topic we're touching on is what the fuck to do with an 0-4 roster. Now, we're going to play a little game of humiliating personal example. The only roster I came away with the championship from last year is loaded, and I mean fucking loaded. Jefferson, Debo, Higgins, Deontay, Hollywood, Amari, Kirk. I've even got Ridley and OBJ just chilling on the bench. Pitts, Ertz, Everett, as well as anywhere from 4 to 6 starting quarterbacks so far this year. The point is, a team that should be the reverse of what its record is. This might be a familiar story to y'all. So we are a quarter way through the fantasy football season, and it's shit or get off the pot time. This roster has just lost Javonte Williams and Cordarrelle Patterson in one fell swoop to IR. Akers has been underperforming. Kareem is a decent flex. Carter is being supplanted by Brees. And Walker is stuck behind Rashad, still healthy for now. Penny. Point is, glaring need is the RB position. I have enough commodity and wide receivers and all of my own draft picks to make a play for a top-tier running back through trade and hope to correct my 0-4 record in an attempt to make playoffs. The risk is weakening my current roster and or its future strength through loss of draft picks at a repeat run. This is actually the direction I was leaning until the news came out about both Javonte and Cordarrelle. Being water is not just sound draft advice. You need to react in season as well. I decided it might be time to part with some pieces and build up some capital for the 2023 draft. A big factor in that decision is the historic nature of the incoming draft class with stud-level options at all relevant fantasy positions. By starting now, I'm hoping to acquire what I need in next year's draft to complete a one-season turnaround and end up back in the championship. But this is merely one direction to take, using a quite friendly, albeit humiliating example. Be strategic when it comes to people with multiple picks within a round that you are targeting. Where do you see those rosters finishing in the year? If the person who currently holds those picks isn't factoring that in, it could mean the difference in a hit and miss when it comes to draft time with the increased capital. In the example, my biggest value for trades will be Justin Jefferson. I just have to decide whether my roster can withstand giving away fantasy gold for a dynasty. Smoke Show! The last topic that we are covering today is less impactful on fantasy than it is on real NFL action. That is the subject of concussion protocol in relation to the last 2 Miami Dolphins games that have likely left Tua Tagovailoa with some level of brain damage. Anyone with a pair of eyes more functional than Stevie Wonder's could tell Tua suffered a concussion in the Week 3 matchup against Buffalo. A game that he should not have been cleared to come back to. I mean, a back injury? Are you fucking for real right now? It looked like his puppet strings were cut mid-stride as he was ambling away. That was neurological damage in response. Not only did they put him back in that game, they played him again 4 days later. How much blatant disregard for a human's cognitive health can one organization have? You were 3-0 playing on a very short week. Let Teddy Two Gloves get the first team reps for a couple days and do his best to get you through to week 5. Organizational hubris and a disregard for the health of players that you are charged with protecting. Shame on the Miami Dolphins for putting Tua in that situation. That was terrifying watching that play happen, as I am someone who has suffered a handful of concussions, 2 of which ended my hockey playing days. I have 2 full weekends of memory that have been wiped from my brain permanently. For all I know, the neurological response that we saw from Tua, where his fingers were running away from each other, could very well have been the response that my body gave upon injury. I'll never know. But Tua doesn't have that luxury. And he will be surrounded by that replay forever. It's just another chapter in the ineptitude shown by the NFL in regards to player safety. I just hope that this was public enough to affect some actual change in the protocols before we are collective national witnesses to a public execution. Fuck, is that really what I'm ending on? If you're listening on Spotify, please take a half second to leave a 5-star rating, as I want all the stars like Mario 64. Use the other half second from earlier and hit the subscribe button on the way out. I greatly appreciate it. As always, this podcast is proudly presented by the Fantasy Points Media Group, which itself is brought to you by fantasypoints.com. You know, the site whose experts and expert draft guide I were quoting earlier. So go to fantasypoints.com, use the discount code SMOKY22 for the best price off the best site in sports, period. That's it. There you have it. I want to thank each and every one of you for sticking it out to the end. If you wouldn't mind, shoot us a follow on Twitter at @the_smoke_show. And you can follow me at SmokeyHellNFL on Twitter, and YouTube search The Smoke Show Experience. It really is the best way to consume this show. I am a human cartoon. My name is Josh Smokey Hell Nelson, and all I've got left to say is, where there's smoke, there's fire.
What's happening? This is Joshua Kelly, running back for the LA Chargers, telling you to check out the Smoke Show podcast.
Smoke Show! Smoke Show! Smoke Show! Smoke Show! Smoke Show!
Where there's smoke,
There is motherfucking fire!
yeah, buddy!
Wait, do you need a clean version of that, by the way?
Hell no, this is the Smoke Show, baby.